Elena Matthews sat frozen at the defense table, her hands trembling uncontrollably as hot tears carved tracks through her carefully applied makeup. The courtroom buzzed with whispers, cameras clicking like hungry predators, capturing her moment of complete collapse. Her lawyer had just walked out, abandoning her minutes before the trial's most critical moment. "Your Honor, I don't know what to do," she choked out, her voice breaking into a sob that echoed off the mahogany walls. The judge's face remained stern, unmoved. The prosecutor smiled, a thin, predatory grin that said victory was already his. No one stepped forward. No one moved. The billionaire heiress, once featured on Forbes covers and celebrated at charity galas, was utterly alone, until a quiet voice cut through the chaos from the back of the room. "I'll stand with her!" Every head turned. Marcus Reed, the courthouse janitor in his worn gray uniform, mop still in hand, walked slowly down the center aisle. His work boots squeaked against the polished floor. His weathered face, lined with 53 years of hard living, showed absolute resolve. None of them, not the judge, not the jury, not the reporters frantically typing, could have known that this single moment would expose one of the most elaborate conspiracies in American legal history. Before we dive into this incredible story of courage, justice, and redemption, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. And if you believe that everyone, whether a powerful heiress or a humble janitor, deserves dignity and justice, don't forget to like and subscribe. Stories like Marcus's deserve to be told, and you won't want to miss what happens next. Now, let's discover what drove a man who had lost everything to step out of the shadows at the exact moment when one woman's world was falling apart. But first, ask yourself, what would make someone risk everything for a stranger? Chapter 1. The Invisible Man. The first rays of dawn barely touched the Chicago skyline when Marcus Reed pushed through the employee entrance of the Cook County Courthouse, 4:30 a.m., like clockwork, like every morning for the past 18 years. The building was silent, empty, vast, his domain before the lawyers and judges arrived to fill it with noise and importance. Marcus was 53 years old, with salt and pepper hair kept short, deep brown eyes that had seen too much, and hands calloused from decades of manual labor. His gray maintenance uniform hung loosely on his thin frame. He'd lost weight over the years, the way men do when they stop caring about meals and focus only on surviving one day at a time. His tiny studio apartment in Pilsen was dark when he left each morning. No photographs on the walls, no decorations, just a mattress on the floor, a hot plate, and a single window that looked out onto a brick wall. Rent was $850 a month, nearly half his paycheck, but it was all he could afford. Breakfast was instant coffee, a granola bar, and whatever leftovers he could scrounge from the courthouse break room after hours. That particular morning, Marcus wheeled his cleaning cart past courtroom 4A, the grand courtroom where the biggest cases were heard. And today was enormous. The Elena Matthews embezzlement trial. The media had been circling this case like vultures for months. Elena Matthews, tech heiress, philanthropist, socialite worth $800 million, now accused of stealing $50 million from her own charitable foundation. Marcus didn't follow the news. He didn't own a television. But he heard things. When you're invisible, just the janitor, people talk as if you're not there. He'd overheard the lawyers late at night, prepping in the empty courtrooms. He'd seen the documents left carelessly on tables. He'd watched the players in this drama, and something felt wrong, deeply wrong. But Marcus had learned long ago not to get involved. Keep your head down, do your job, go home. That's how you survive. Except Marcus Reed hadn't always been a janitor. 18 years ago, he'd been Marcus Reed, Eschini, a criminal defense attorney with one of Chicago's most prestigious firms. He'd had a corner office on the 40th floor, a six-figure salary, a beautiful wife named Grace, and a daughter, Lily, who was 7 years old and believed her daddy could fix anything. Until the night everything shattered. Marcus had been defending a whistleblower, a corporate accountant exposing environmental crimes by Titanium Industries, a chemical manufacturing giant. Marcus had evidence, ironclad proof, documents showing illegal dumping that poisoned a community's water supply, causing illnesses and deaths. But 2 days before trial, the evidence vanished, disappeared from his office safe, and then new evidence appeared. Fabricated emails, forged documents suggesting Marcus himself had manufactured the case for publicity and profit. He was disbarred, professionally destroyed. His wife left, taking Lily with her. "I can't do this anymore, Marcus," Grace had said, her voice hollow. "I can't watch you destroy yourself." She moved to Oregon, remarried. Lily, now 25, hadn't spoken to him in 11 years. Marcus spiraled. Lost the house, lost his savings fighting to clear his name. It took him 6 years to prove his innocence and get his license reinstated. But by then, no firm would touch him. The stain was permanent. So he took the only job available, mopping floors in the same courthouse where he'd once argued cases. Every day he walked past courtrooms where former colleagues practiced. They didn't recognize him, or they pretended not to. To them, he was furniture, invisible. The system had chewed him up and spit him out, and he'd accepted his fate. Until today. As Marcus wiped down the benches in courtroom 4A, his supervisor's voice crackled over his radio. "Reed, we need that courtroom spotless. VIP trial today. Cameras everywhere. Don't screw it up." "Copy that," Marcus replied quietly. By 9 a.m., the courtroom was packed, reporters squeezed into every available seat. Camera crews lined the back wall. At the prosecution table sat District Attorney Vincent Harper, a man with silver hair, an expensive suit, and a reputation for never losing. His team of 4 assistants shuffled papers with military precision. At the defense table sat Elena Matthews, alone. She was 34 years old, though today she looked older. Exhausted, terrified, fragile. Her chestnut hair was pulled back tightly. Her navy blue suit was impeccable, but couldn't hide the way her shoulders shook. Beside her were 3 empty chairs, reserved for her legal team from Caldwell and Associates, the most expensive defense firm in Chicago, billing at $8,000 per hour. But they weren't there. Marcus, standing quietly in the corner near the cleaning closet, watched Elena check her phone obsessively, call after call. Each time she lowered the phone, her face grew paler. Marcus knew that look. He'd worn it himself once, the look of someone realizing they've been abandoned. "All rise." Judge Miriam Caldwell entered, stern, gray-haired, legendary for her no-nonsense approach. She took her seat, surveyed the courtroom, and her eyes stopped on the empty chairs at the defense table. "Miss Matthews," the judge said, her voice sharp, "where is your legal representation?" Elena stood shakily. "Your Honor, I don't know. They were here yesterday. I've been calling all morning. No one's answering. I don't understand." Her voice cracked. She pressed a hand to her mouth, fighting tears. Vincent Harper rose smoothly, a shark smelling blood. "Your Honor, it appears the defense has abandoned their client. Given the circumstances, the state moves for a summary judgment. Miss Matthews clearly has no defense to present." Murmurs erupted across the courtroom. Cameras zoomed in on Elena's face as tears began to fall. She was breaking down publicly, spectacularly, exactly what the media wanted. Judge Caldwell's face remained impassive. "Miss Matthews, without legal representation, I cannot proceed. I'm forced to either postpone indefinitely or rule in favor of... I'll stand with her." The voice was quiet but clear. It cut through the noise like a blade. Every head turned. Marcus Reed stood near the back, his janitor's uniform still bearing the day's dust, his mop and bucket beside him. The fluorescent lights overhead cast shadows across his weathered face, but his eyes burned with a determination no one in that room had seen in decades. Laughter rippled through the courtroom, soft at first, then louder. A janitor? Was this a joke? But Marcus didn't smile. He set down his mop carefully, as if it were precious, and walked forward. 18 years of pushing that cart couldn't erase the posture of a man who'd once commanded courtrooms. His stride was steady, measured, powerful. Judge Caldwell raised an eyebrow. "And who, exactly, are you?" "My name is Marcus Reed, Your Honor. I'm a member of the Illinois State Bar, and I'd like to represent Miss Matthews." Vincent Harper burst into laughter. "A janitor? Your Honor, this is absurd." "I was an attorney for 23 years, Marcus said calmly, meeting Harper's eyes without flinching. "I've tried over 80 cases in this courthouse. I know the law, I know procedure, and I know what justice looks like." He reached into his worn wallet and pulled out his bar card, renewed just last year, though he'd never expected to use it again. Judge Caldwell took the card, examined it closely. Her face changed. Recognition, surprise, maybe even respect. "Marcus Reed," she murmured. "I remember you, the Titanium Industries case." "Yes, Your Honor." "That was 18 years ago." "Yes, Your Honor." "And you think you're still competent to practice law?" Marcus looked directly at Elena, who was staring at him with red-rimmed eyes, confusion and desperate hope mingling on her face. "Your Honor," Marcus said, his voice steady, "this woman deserves a defense. Everyone does." "I may not have practiced in 18 years, but I've spent every single day in this courthouse, watching trials, studying procedure, understanding how justice works, and how it fails. If Miss Matthews will have me, I'll defend her with everything I have." Elena stood slowly. She didn't know this man, had probably passed him in the hallways 100 times without noticing, but in his eyes, she saw something her expensive lawyers had never shown her: sincerity. "Yes," Elena said, her voice trembling but firm. "Yes, Your Honor, I accept Mr. Reed as my attorney." The courtroom exploded. Reporters shouted questions. The judge banged her gavel repeatedly. Vincent Harper's face turned red with fury. "Order!" Judge Caldwell shouted. When silence finally fell, she looked at Marcus. "Mr. Reed, you have 15 minutes to confer with your client. Do not waste this court's time." "Understood, Your Honor." Marcus approached the defense table. A security guard moved to block him. "Sorry, buddy, attorneys only beyond this point." Marcus held up his bar card. The judge nodded confirmation. The guard stepped aside, embarrassed. When Marcus sat down beside Elena, he felt every eye in the courtroom burning into his back, but he focused only on her. "Something's very wrong here," he whispered. "Your lawyers didn't just abandon you. This was planned." Elena's eyes widened. "How do you know?" "Because I've seen it before. Everything about this case, the timing, the theatrics, the way they're pushing for a quick conviction, it's orchestrated. Someone wants you destroyed. But why? Who?" "We'll find out. But first, I need you to tell me everything, and I mean everything." For the first time since this nightmare began, Elena felt something she thought she'd lost: hope. Chapter 2. 15 minutes. The next 15 minutes felt like 15 seconds. Elena spoke rapidly, desperately trying to compress months of preparation into an emergency briefing. Her words tumbled over each other, racing against the clock. 8 years ago, she began, her voice still shaky, I inherited Matthew's technology from my father. When he died, everyone expected me to sell it or run it into the ground. I was 26, a woman. What did I know about running a tech empire? Marcus listened without interrupting, his eyes never leaving her face. He wasn't just hearing words, he was reading between them, catching the pauses, the moments where pain flickered across her expression. But I didn't sell. I doubled the company's value in 5 years. We developed medical diagnostic software that saves lives. Real lives, Marcus. Children with rare diseases, early cancer detection. Our technology matters. So you created the Matthews Foundation to handle the charitable work? Marcus asked. Yes. 3 years ago, we funded research grants, built clinics in underserved areas, provided free medical screenings. Last year alone, we helped over 200,000 people. Her voice cracked with emotion. And now they're saying I stole from it? That I embezzled $50 million for personal use? Tell me about the money. Where did it go? Elena pulled out a folder with trembling hands. That's what I don't understand. The prosecution claims I transferred funds to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. But Marcus, I never authorized those transfers. I have complete documentation showing my authorization process. Every grant, every expenditure. I signed off personally with multiple levels of approval. Marcus opened the folder. Financial statements, bank records, grant approvals, all meticulously organized. Your previous lawyers had all this? Yes, everything. And they never introduced it as evidence? Elena paused, realization dawning. No, they said the strategy was to attack the prosecution's evidence, not to present our own yet. They said timing was everything. Marcus's jaw tightened. Elena, that's not strategy. That's sabotage. Any competent attorney would have filed these documents immediately. This proves authorization protocols were followed. Without this, the prosecution's case looks airtight. You mean my own lawyers were deliberately— She couldn't finish the sentence. Tell me about your former CFO, Thomas Brennan. Elena's face darkened. I fired him 18 months ago. He was cooking the books. Minor things at first, but when I dug deeper, I found he'd been skimming money from vendor contracts. I reported him, cooperated fully with auditors, and he was charged with fraud. And now he's the prosecution's star witness? Yes, he's claiming I ordered him to make the illegal transfers, that I was the mastermind and he was just following orders. Her voice rose with frustration. It's completely backwards. I'm the one who caught him. 5 minutes, the bailiff announced. Marcus leaned closer. Elena, listen carefully. When we go back in there, no matter what I say or do, don't react. Don't look surprised. Don't correct me. Don't show emotion. Everything is part of the plan, even if you don't understand it yet. Why? Because if your lawyers were paid to lose, someone powerful is behind this, and they're watching everything. We have to assume they know our every move. You really think it's that deep? Marcus looked at her with eyes that had seen betrayal up close. 18 years ago, I thought I was just defending a whistleblower. Turned out I was threatening a billion-dollar corporation with political connections reaching all the way to the state senate. They destroyed me so thoroughly that I spent years believing I deserved it. He paused. I won't let that happen to you. But you're just one person. How can we possibly— We start by doing what they don't expect. We fight. Time, the bailiff called. Marcus stood, buttoning his jacket, the same jacket he'd worn to his disbarment hearing 18 years ago, kept in plastic in the back of his closet. It still fit, barely, though it smelled faintly of mothballs and lost dreams. Judge Caldwell banged her gavel. Mr. Reed, are you prepared to deliver an opening statement? Marcus walked to the podium. His hands, usually gripping a mop handle, now gripped polished wood. The jury, 12 faces, 12 strangers who would decide Elena's fate, stared at him with expressions ranging from curiosity to skepticism. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Marcus began, his voice clear and steady. My name is Marcus Reed. I want to start by apologizing for my appearance. I'm not wearing a $1,000 suit like the district attorney. I don't have a team of assistants or fancy visual presentations. An hour ago, I was cleaning this very courtroom. Soft murmurs rippled through the gallery. But for 18 years, I have stood in this building every single day, watching justice happen. Sometimes I've seen truth prevail, and sometimes I've seen truth buried under money, power, and carefully constructed lies. Vincent Harper started to rise, but Judge Caldwell waved him down. Justice, Marcus continued, doesn't depend on how expensive your lawyer is. It doesn't depend on who has the biggest legal team or the most impressive PowerPoint slides. Justice depends on one thing and one thing only: the truth. He turned to face the jury directly. The truth in this case is simple. Elena Matthews did not steal a single dollar. She built a foundation that saved lives. She implemented safeguards and protocols. And when she discovered real fraud committed by someone else, she reported it, even though it would have been easier to look the other way. Objection. Harper was on his feet. Counsel is testifying, not presenting an opening statement. Sustained, Judge Caldwell said. Mr. Reed, stick to what you intend to prove. Marcus nodded. My apologies, Your Honor. What I will prove is this. The financial transfers in question were unauthorized. Miss Matthews's protocols were followed correctly for legitimate transactions. The evidence will show that someone else had access to those accounts. And most importantly, the evidence will show that Miss Matthews is the victim here, not the perpetrator. He paused, letting the words settle over the jury. By the end of this trial, you'll see clearly who's telling the truth and who's trying to hide it. Thank you. Marcus sat down. It wasn't polished, it wasn't theatrical, but it was honest. And from the way 3 jurors nodded slightly, Marcus knew at least someone was listening. Vincent Harper stood for his opening statement. He was everything Marcus wasn't. Tall, imposing, with the confidence of someone who'd never lost. His voice was smooth, practiced, devastating. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you about Elena Matthews. She wants you to believe she's a victim. Poor little rich girl, betrayed by everyone around her. His tone dripped with sarcasm, but the evidence will tell a different story. He walked slowly, making eye contact with each juror. Elena Matthews had everything: wealth, power, respect, but it wasn't enough. She wanted more. So she created a charitable foundation, convinced people to donate millions, and then systematically looted it for her personal benefit. Harper clicked a remote, and a screen lit up with bank statements. $50 million, transferred from the foundation to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, accounts that only Elena Matthews had access to. We'll prove this with bank records, digital signatures, and the testimony of Thomas Brennan, her former CFO who witnessed her crimes firsthand. He paused for effect. The defense wants you to believe Mr. Brennan is the real criminal. But ask yourself, who had more to gain? A CFO making $200,000 a year? Or a billionaire who treated charitable donations like her personal piggy bank? Harper returned to his table, his movements calculated for maximum impact. By the end of this trial, you won't have any doubt. Elena Matthews is a thief, and thieves must face justice. The morning session felt like a nightmare in slow motion. The prosecution called their first witness, a forensic accountant who walked the jury through transaction after transaction, each one painted as evidence of Elena's guilt. When it was Marcus's turn to cross-examine, he stood slowly, feeling every eye on him. 18 years. It had been 18 years since he'd done this. But when he opened his mouth, muscle memory took over. The questions came naturally, each one building on the last, searching for inconsistencies. Mr. Patterson, you testified that these transactions bore Elena Matthews's digital signature, correct? Yes. And a digital signature is essentially a unique code. Correct. Can digital signatures be replicated or stolen? The accountant hesitated. In theory, yes, but... So if someone had access to Miss Matthews's authentication credentials, they could theoretically make transfers appear to come from her. Objection, Harper barked. Speculation. Your Honor, I'm establishing the limitations of the evidence, Marcus said calmly. I'll allow it. Answer the question, Mr. Patterson. Yes, the accountant admitted reluctantly. If someone had her credentials, they could potentially mimic her authorization. And did you investigate whether anyone else had access to those credentials? That wasn't part of my assignment. So your analysis simply shows that transfers were made using Miss Matthews's credentials, not that she personally made them? I suppose that's accurate. Marcus walked back to the defense table. Small victory, but significant. He'd planted doubt. By the end of the day's session, Judge Caldwell looked at Marcus with an expression that might have been grudging respect. Mr. Reed, you might want to invest in a better suit for tomorrow. I'll see what I can do, Your Honor. As the courtroom emptied, Elena turned to Marcus, her eyes glistening. You were amazing. Where did that come from? Marcus gathered his notes into a battered briefcase. It never left. I just forgot I still had it. Thank you. I don't know how to... Don't thank me yet. We've barely started. And we need to talk. Really talk. Everything you know about this case, every person involved, every detail you might think is irrelevant. Because someone orchestrated this and we need to figure out who before they make their next move. Come to my house tonight. I have all the files there. I can't. I have my shift at the courthouse. If I don't show up, I'll be fired. For the first time, Elena truly understood the gulf between their worlds. She could lose millions and still live comfortably. He could lose a single paycheck and face eviction. I'll pay you, she said quickly. Whatever your hourly rate. No. Marcus, you need... If this were about money, I wouldn't have stood up today. I'm doing this because it's right. Because I know what it feels like when the system turns against you and nobody believes you. He looked at her steadily. But I will come by after my shift. Midnight too late? Midnight is perfect. As Marcus left through the courthouse's back entrance, still wearing his maintenance uniform under his old suit jacket, he didn't notice the car parked across the street. Inside, a man with a camera had photographed everything, and in an office downtown, a phone was ringing. The war had begun. Chapter 3: The Truth in the Shadows. At midnight, Marcus pulled his 1998 Toyota Corolla, rust-spotted and wheezing, through the gates of Elena's estate in Lincoln Park. The property was massive, the kind of place that appeared in architecture magazines. The security guard at the gate had been told to expect him, but the look on the man's face said it all. Marcus didn't belong here. He parked next to a row of luxury cars, a Mercedes, a Tesla, a Porsche, and his beat-up Corolla looked like a stray dog among show animals. Marcus still wore his janitor's uniform, 8 hours of cleaning supplies embedded in the fabric. He'd thought about stopping home to change, but his apartment was in the opposite direction, and gas was expensive. A different security guard escorted him inside, not to help, but to watch, making sure the janitor didn't pocket any silver. Elena met him in her study, a room with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, leather furniture, and a fireplace crackling warmth into the space. She'd changed from her courtroom suit into jeans and a sweater, looking more human, more vulnerable. Coffee, she offered. Please. She poured from a machine that probably cost more than Marcus's monthly rent. The coffee was rich, smooth, completely different from the instant sludge he drank every morning. All right, Marcus said, setting down the cup. Tell me everything. Not the version you told your lawyers. Not the version you've been preparing to tell the media. The truth. Because if we're going to win this, I need to know what we're really fighting. Elena sat across from him, pulling her knees up like a child seeking comfort. For a long moment, she stared into the fire. My father built Matthews Technology from nothing, she began. Grew up poor in Detroit, worked his way through community college, and eventually created software that revolutionized medical diagnostics. By the time he died 5 years ago, the company was worth $500 million. And he left it all to you? Yes. My brother, Daniel, got a trust fund, $20 million, more money than most people see in a lifetime. But the company came to me. How did he feel about that? Elena's expression darkened. Daniel felt betrayed. He believed he deserved the company because he was the son, the firstborn, the logical choice. Never mind that he'd been in and out of rehab 3 times, or that Dad had bailed him out of gambling debts twice. In Daniel's mind, I stole his birthright. Marcus made a note. Where is Daniel now? Los Angeles. We haven't spoken in 4 years. Was he involved with the foundation? No. He wanted nothing to do with any of it. Said it was beneath him. She paused. Why are you asking about Daniel? Because in cases like this, we look at who benefits if you're destroyed. Who gets the company if you're convicted? Elena's face paled. The company would go to the shareholders, but my voting shares, the controlling interest, would revert to the family trust, which means Daniel would control everything. But he's in Los Angeles. He hasn't been anywhere near. Doesn't matter where he is physically, money can travel anywhere. Marcus leaned forward. Tell me about Thomas Brennan. Everything. Elena took a deep breath. I hired him 6 years ago as CFO. He came highly recommended. Harvard MBA. Experience at 2 Fortune 500 companies. For the first few years, everything seemed fine. The company grew, the foundation launched successfully. He seemed loyal, competent. When did things change? About 2 years ago, I started noticing small irregularities, vendor payments that seemed slightly inflated, expense reports that didn't quite add up. Nothing major, just off. So I hired an independent auditor. And the auditor found that Brennan had been skimming money through fake vendor accounts. Small amounts at first, $5,000 here, $10,000 there, but over 3 years he'd stolen nearly $2 million. Marcus whistled softly. What did you do? I confronted him privately, gave him a chance to explain. He broke down, claimed he had gambling debts, said he'd pay everything back. I told him I was still going to report it, but that his cooperation would be noted. How did he react? He was terrified. Begged me not to file charges, but I had no choice. It was the right thing to do. The auditor's report went to the board, and we terminated Brennan immediately. He was charged with embezzlement and fraud. And now he's claiming you ordered him to make illegal transfers? Yes, it's insane. I'm the one who caught him. Marcus stood, pacing the length of the study. Elena, think carefully. In the months after you fired Brennan, did anything unusual happen? Threats, strange encounters, people asking questions they shouldn't? Elena thought for a moment. There was one thing. About 3 months ago, a journalist contacted me, said he was writing an article about charitable foundations and wanted to interview me about best practices. It seemed legitimate, so I agreed. What did you tell him? Everything. How we structured the foundation, our authorization processes, who had access to accounts. I thought I was being helpful. Her voice dropped. Oh God, do you think that he wasn't really a journalist? Yes, what was his name? David Carrington, I think. He said he was with the Chicago Tribune. I'll check tomorrow, but I'm betting there's no David Carrington at the Tribune. Marcus pulled out his phone, making notes. What about your lawyers? Caldwell and Associates. How did you end up with them? They were recommended by my board after the charges were filed. The senior partner, Richard Caldwell, said they were the best criminal defense firm in Chicago. They handled everything: strategy, documentation, communications. I trusted them completely. Did they ever seem off? Discouraging? Did they make decisions that didn't make sense? Elena thought back over the past months. Now that you mention it, yes. They kept saying we should delay, that we weren't ready. They refused to file motions to dismiss even though I had evidence. They said it was all part of the strategy, that we'd hit hard at trial. She looked at Marcus with dawning horror. They were never planning to defend me at all, were they? No. They were stalling while someone built a case too strong to overcome. And then, at the perfect moment, they abandoned you. If I hadn't stepped in, you'd have been convicted today. But who would do this? Who has that kind of power? Before Marcus could answer, his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You should have stayed in the shadows where you belong. Back off now, or you'll regret it. Marcus showed the screen to Elena. Her face went white. They're watching us, she whispered. Yes, which means we're on the right track. Marcus stood, exhaustion pulling at his bones. Get some sleep. Tomorrow the prosecution is calling Thomas Brennan to the stand. I need to be ready to tear his testimony apart. Marcus, wait, these people, whoever they are, they destroyed you once before. Aren't you afraid they'll do it again? Marcus looked at her with eyes that had already seen the worst. Elena, I've been destroyed. I've lost everything that mattered. My career, my family, my dignity. For 18 years, I've been invisible. Just a janitor people look through without seeing. But you know what? That means I have nothing left to lose. And a man with nothing to lose is the most dangerous opponent they'll ever face. As Marcus drove home through empty Chicago streets, he didn't notice the black sedan following 3 cars behind. Inside his apartment, he pulled out a box from under his bed, old case files from the Titanium Industries case, evidence he'd kept after his vindication. If the same people were behind this, there would be patterns, connections. He worked until 4 a.m., building a web of names, dates, and corporations on his living room wall. And slowly, a picture began to emerge. By the time his alarm went off at 4 a.m., had he even slept? Marcus had a theory, a terrifying, audacious theory that connected Elena's case to his own destruction 18 years ago. He was right about one thing. He had nothing to lose. But Elena had everything to lose. And that's what made this fight so dangerous. Chapter 4. The Witness. The next morning, the courtroom was even more packed than before. Word had spread about the janitor-turned-lawyer, and reporters filled every available space, cameras poised to capture every moment. Marcus arrived in the same suit as yesterday, his only suit, but he'd ironed it and spot-cleaned the worst stains. It would have to do. Elena was already at the defense table, looking pale but determined. "Did you sleep?" she asked. "No, did you?" "No." They exchanged tired smiles, warriors before battle. "All rise!" Judge Caldwell entered, and the trial resumed. Vincent Harper stood with the confidence of a man who knew his next witness would destroy the defense. "Your Honor, the people called Thomas Brennan." Thomas Brennan walked to the witness stand like a man walking to salvation. He was 43, with thinning blonde hair and a nervous energy that made him seem both harmless and pathetic. He wore an ill-fitting gray suit and kept his eyes down, avoiding Elena's gaze entirely. After being sworn in, Harper began his examination with practiced gentleness, like a priest hearing confession. "Mr. Brennan, can you tell us your relationship to the defendant?" "I was CFO of Matthews Technology for 6 years," Brennan said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I managed the company's finances, including the Matthews Foundation." "And during that time, did Miss Matthews ever ask you to do anything unusual?" Brennan's hands twisted in his lap. "At first, no. Everything was legitimate. But about 2 years ago, she started asking me to make transfers that didn't go through normal channels." "What kind of transfers?" "Large sums, sometimes millions of dollars, to offshore accounts. She said they were for foundation work, but the documentation was always vague. When I questioned her, she told me to just do what I was told." Elena started to react, but Marcus placed a warning hand on her arm. "Stay calm." "Did these transfers concern you?" Harper continued. "Yes, they violated every protocol we'd established, but Miss Matthews was my boss. She made it clear that if I didn't cooperate, I'd be fired." "So you made the transfers?" "Yes." Brennan's voice broke. "I made them. I knew it was wrong, but I was scared of losing my job, my career. I have a family to support." "What happened when you finally confronted her about these illegal activities?" Brennan looked up for the first time, and tears glistened in his eyes. "She fired me, said I was stealing, that I was embezzling funds. She completely twisted everything around to make me the villain when I was just following her orders." Harper let the words hang in the air, letting the jury absorb the image of a frightened employee bullied into crime by a powerful boss. "No further questions, Your Honor." Judge Caldwell looked at Marcus. "Cross-examination, Mr. Reed." Marcus stood slowly. He carried a thin folder, Elena's documentation, and walked to the lectern with measured steps. Brennan watched him warily, like a rabbit sensing a predator. "Mr. Brennan," Marcus began, his voice gentle, "you testified that Miss Matthews asked you to make transfers about 2 years ago. Can you tell us the exact date of the first such transfer?" Brennan blinked. It was approximately 2 years ago. Late fall, I think." "You think? Surely financial records would show the exact date." "Well, yes, but I don't remember off the top of my head." Marcus pulled out a document. "Let me help you. According to the prosecution's own evidence, the first questionable transfer was made on November 3rd, 2 years ago. Does that sound right?" "Yes, that sounds about right." "And you claim Miss Matthews personally ordered this transfer?" "Yes. In person, by email, phone call. How did she communicate this order?" Brennan hesitated. I believe it was in person." "You believe? Or you know?" "It was in person." Marcus pulled out another document. "Mr. Brennan, this is Miss Matthews's travel schedule from that period. On November 3rd, she was in Geneva, Switzerland, attending a medical technology conference. She didn't return to Chicago until November 7th. So how could she have ordered a transfer in person when she was on another continent?" Brennan's face flushed. "Then it must have been by email." "By email, I see." Marcus approached the witness stand. "The prosecution has provided email records. Can you point out which email contains Miss Matthews's order for this transfer?" There must be one in the records." "There isn't. I've reviewed every email between you and Miss Matthews from that period. None mention this transfer." Harper jumped to his feet. "Objection! The witness can't be expected to remember every communication from 2 years ago." "Your Honor," Marcus said calmly, "Mr. Brennan testified very specifically that Miss Matthews ordered these transfers. If he can't provide any evidence of how she communicated these orders, his testimony is speculation, not fact." "Overruled. Continue, Mr. Reed." Marcus returned to the lectern. "Mr. Brennan, you also testified that you had a family to support and couldn't afford to lose your job. Is that correct?" "Yes. And yet you'd already stolen nearly $2 million through fake vendor accounts, hadn't you?" Brennan's mouth opened and closed. "That was different." "Different how? You just testified that you were afraid of losing your income, but you'd already secured $2 million in stolen funds. Doesn't sound like you were particularly worried about supporting your family." "I had gambling debts." "Ah, yes, gambling debts. Can you tell us how much you owed?" "I don't recall the exact—" $3.7 million. Marcus pulled out yet another document. "This is from the casino where you gambled. They filed a lawsuit against you seeking payment. $3.7 million in losses over a 4-year period." Brennan was sweating now. "Miss Matthews knew about my gambling. She used it against me." "Really? Because according to your own testimony in the criminal case against you, Miss Matthews only discovered your theft when an auditor she hired found the irregularities. She didn't know about your gambling until you told her when you were caught." "She must have known—" "Must have? Or did?" Marcus's voice sharpened. "Mr. Brennan, isn't it true that you were stealing from Matthews Technology to cover your gambling debts? And when you got caught, you needed a scapegoat, so you blamed your boss. No, she ordered those transfers. Then why can't you provide a single piece of evidence showing her ordering them? No email, no text, no written authorization, just your word against hers." "Because she was careful. She covered her tracks." Marcus turned to the jury. So the woman you're describing is both a criminal mastermind who left no evidence of ordering illegal transfers and simultaneously careless enough to use her own digital signature for those transfers? Which is it, Mr. Brennan? Is she brilliant or stupid? That's not... One more question. After Miss Matthews fired you, you were charged with embezzlement. As part of your plea agreement with the district attorney's office, what were you offered in exchange for testimony against Miss Matthews? Brennan glanced at Harper, who remained stone-faced. Immunity from prosecution. Immunity, so if Miss Matthews is convicted, you walk free. But if she's acquitted, you go to prison for years. Is that correct? The truth is the truth. Answer the question. Do you have a deal with the prosecution? Yes, Brennan whispered. Speak up, please. Yes, Brennan nearly shouted. Yes, I have a deal, but that doesn't mean I'm lying. No further questions. As Marcus returned to his seat, he could feel the shift in the courtroom. Doubt. It hung in the air like smoke. The jury's faces had changed from certainty to uncertainty. Harper tried to recover on redirect, but the damage was done. When Brennan left the stand, he looked like a man who knew his story was falling apart. During the lunch recess, Elena grabbed Marcus's arm. That was incredible. You destroyed him. We wounded him, Marcus corrected. But this isn't over. They have more witnesses, and someone is pulling strings behind the scenes. Brennan's testimony falling apart is a setback for them, but not a defeat. What do we do now? We find out who's really behind this, and I think I know where to start. Marcus pulled out his phone and called a number he hadn't dialed in 18 years. It rang 4 times before a woman's voice answered. Hello? Lily, it's your father. Silence on the other end. Long, painful silence. Lily, I know you don't want to talk to me. I know I don't deserve anything from you, but I need your help. There's a woman whose life is being destroyed the same way mine was, and you're the only person I know who might be able to help her. More silence. Then, what kind of help? Marcus exhaled relief. You're a digital forensics specialist, right? Yes. I need you to track some financial transfers, offshore accounts, shell corporations, the kind of stuff that looks impossible to trace. Dad, I don't know if... Please, just look at the files. If you decide you can't help, I'll understand. But just look. Another long pause. Send me what you have. I'll look, but I'm not promising anything. Thank you, Lily. That's all I can ask. When he hung up, Elena was watching him with a strange expression. That was your daughter? Yes. You haven't spoken in 11 years, and she's still willing to help. Marcus's eyes grew distant. She's a better person than I ever was. Gets that from her mother. As they walked back into the courtroom for the afternoon session, Marcus didn't see the man in the gallery taking photos with a telephoto lens. Didn't see the messages being sent to an office across town. Didn't see the wheels beginning to turn on a plan to stop him before he got too close to the truth. But Elena saw. And for the first time since this nightmare began, she realized just how dangerous their enemies truly were. Chapter 5. The Conspiracy Unravels. That night, Marcus worked his janitorial shift with his mind elsewhere. As he mopped floors and emptied trash cans, his phone buzzed with an email from Lily. The subject line read, "You were right." Attached were dozens of documents, financial analyses, corporate structures, shell company registrations. Lily had worked fast. Marcus ducked into an empty courtroom and read her findings. What he saw made his blood run cold. The offshore accounts receiving the stolen foundation money weren't random. They were owned by a Cayman Island shell corporation called Meridian Holdings. Meridian Holdings was owned by another shell company in Delaware. That company was owned by an investment firm in New York, and that investment firm had a single major investor, Titanium Industries. The same company that had destroyed Marcus 18 years ago, but it went deeper. Lily had traced connections between Titanium Industries and several key players in Elena's case. Richard Caldwell, the senior partner who'd abandoned Elena, sat on the board of a Titanium subsidiary. Thomas Brennan's gambling debts had been purchased by a collection agency owned by, surprise, Titanium Industries. Even Vincent Harper, the district attorney, had received campaign contributions from Titanium executives. And then there was the final piece. Daniel Matthews, Elena's brother, had received a $5 million consulting payment from a Titanium subsidiary 6 months ago, just before the embezzlement charges were filed. Marcus leaned against the wall, his mind racing. This wasn't about Elena. This was about Matthews' technology. The company's medical diagnostic software had detected environmental toxins linked to Titanium Industries' illegal dumping sites. The same dumping sites Marcus had tried to expose 18 years ago. If Elena was convicted, Daniel would take control of the company, and Titanium had already bought Daniel's cooperation. Marcus called Elena immediately. "We need to meet, now, and we need to call your board of directors." "Marcus, it's 11 o'clock at night." "I don't care. Get everyone to your house within the hour. Trust me." 90 minutes later, Marcus stood in Elena's living room facing 7 bewildered board members. He'd taped printouts of Lily's findings to the wall, creating a massive conspiracy web. "What you're looking at," Marcus said, "is proof that Elena's prosecution is part of a corporate conspiracy. Titanium Industries wants to control Matthews' technology because your diagnostic software can detect their environmental crimes. They can't buy the company while Elena controls it, so they're destroying her to put her brother in charge, someone they've already compromised." The board members stared in stunned silence. "This is insane," one of them finally said. "Titanium Industries is a Fortune 500 company. You're saying they're framing Elena for embezzlement?" "Not just framing her. They've compromised her lawyers, bought off witnesses, and influenced the prosecution. They did the exact same thing to me 18 years ago when I tried to expose their environmental crimes." "Do you have proof?" another board member asked. Marcus gestured to the wall. "Financial transfers, corporate connections, campaign contributions, it's all documented. But we need to act fast. Tomorrow, the prosecution will rest their case. If we don't get ahead of this, Elena will be convicted." "What do you propose?" "We go public, hold a press conference, release these documents, force the FBI to investigate." "That's incredibly risky," someone objected. "If you're wrong—" "I'm not wrong. Look at the evidence." Elena stepped forward. "He's right. Everything Marcus said makes sense. My lawyers abandoning me, Brennan's convenient testimony, the timing of everything. It was orchestrated." The board debated for another hour before finally agreeing. They would hold a press conference the next morning before court resumed. But as Marcus left Elena's house at 2 a.m., exhausted and running on fumes, he didn't notice the car following him, didn't see the 2 men in suits watching his apartment building. At 4 a.m., as Marcus prepared for another day, another shift, another courtroom battle, his phone rang. An unknown number. "Hello?" "Mr. Reed, this is Agent Sarah Chen, FBI. We need to talk about Titanium Industries." Marcus's heart raced. "How did you—" "We've been investigating them for 2 years. Your daughter sent us her findings tonight. We need you and Miss Matthews to come to our field office immediately. And Mr. Reed, don't go to that press conference. Let us handle this." "Why should I trust you?" "Because Titanium Industries has corrupted local law enforcement and prosecutors, but they can't corrupt federal investigators. We can protect you, but only if you cooperate right now." Marcus made a decision. "I'll call Elena. We'll be there in an hour." By 6 a.m., Marcus and Elena sat in a windowless conference room at the FBI's Chicago field office, staring at a wall covered in photographs, documents, and red strings connecting everything. A web even larger than what Marcus had uncovered. Agent Chen, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, laid it out. Titanium Industries has been engaged in systematic environmental crimes for 3 decades. They've bribed officials, intimidated witnesses, and destroyed anyone who threatened them. Mr. Reed, your case 18 years ago was our first lead, but we couldn't prove anything. You were just another casualty. And now? Marcus asked. Now we have enough. Thanks to your daughter's forensic work and Miss Matthews's foundation records, we can connect titanium to multiple shell corporations, bribery schemes, and conspiracy charges. But we need your testimony, both of you. What about the trial? Elena asked. It resumes in 3 hours. The trial is over, Agent Chen said. We arrested Vincent Harper an hour ago. Richard Caldwell is in custody. Thomas Brennan is cooperating in exchange for protection. And we have warrants out for 3 titanium executives, including the CEO. Elena's eyes filled with tears. It's really over? The criminal charges against you will be dropped this morning. But Miss Matthews, you need to understand. Titanium Industries will fight back. They have billions of dollars and armies of lawyers. This fight isn't over. It's just beginning. Marcus looked at Elena. Are you ready for that? Elena straightened, her fear transforming into determination. They tried to destroy me. They tried to steal my father's company. Yes, I'm ready. Chapter 6. Justice. 3 weeks later, Marcus stood in the same courtroom where this had all begun. But this time, everything was different. Judge Caldwell, no relation to the corrupt lawyer, sat at the bench. The gallery was packed, but not with reporters hungry for scandal. These were people Elena's foundation had helped, community members who'd rallied to support her. In the matter of the state versus Elena Matthews, the judge announced, given the evidence of prosecutorial misconduct and conspiracy to obstruct justice, all charges are hereby dismissed with prejudice. Miss Matthews, you are free to go. Applause erupted. Elena embraced Marcus, tears streaming down her face. We did it. We actually did it. You did it, Marcus corrected gently. You never gave up. But the story didn't end there. The FBI's investigation into Titanium Industries exploded across national news. 7 executives were indicted, congressional hearings were called, and Matthews Technologies' stock soared as Elena's vindication became public. Daniel Matthews fled to Brazil before he could be arrested. He remained there still, his $5 million slowly disappearing into a lifestyle he could no longer afford. Thomas Brennan entered witness protection, his testimony helping to convict the titanium executives he'd worked with. And Marcus stood outside a newly renovated office building in downtown Chicago, looking up at the sign, The Reed Justice Project, Pro Bono Legal Defense. Elena had insisted on funding it. You saved my life, she'd said. Let me help you save others. The office wasn't fancy, nothing like the corporate law firm Marcus had once worked for, but it was real. It mattered. It was for people who couldn't afford $8,000 an hour lawyers, people who needed someone to stand beside them when the system turned against them. Lily came to the office opening. It was the first time Marcus had seen his daughter in person in 11 years. They stood awkwardly for a moment before she hugged him. Brief, tentative, but real. I'm proud of you, Dad, she whispered. I'm proud of you too, Lily. None of this would have been possible without your help. So, are you going to keep mopping floors? Marcus smiled. No. I gave my notice yesterday. 23 years ago, I was a lawyer who became a janitor. Now I'm a janitor who's becoming a lawyer again. Full circle. As the opening reception continued, Elena pulled Marcus aside. They walked out onto the balcony overlooking the Chicago River, the city lights reflecting off the water. I never properly thanked you, Elena said, for standing up when everyone else walked away. You don't need to thank me. You gave me something I thought I'd lost forever. Purpose. Marcus, I've been thinking. The foundation needs new leadership. Someone who understands justice, who fights for people, who can't be bought. Elena, I'm not qualified to... You're the most qualified person I know, and this isn't charity. This is recognition. Will you join the Foundation's board? Help us expand our legal defense initiatives? Marcus looked at her. This woman he'd barely known 3 weeks ago, who'd become something like a partner, a friend, maybe even family. On one condition, he said. What's that? We named the legal defense program after someone who deserves it. Sarah and Lily Reed, my wife and daughter, the people I lost along the way. Elena smiled, tears glistening. The Sarah and Lily Reed Legal Defense Program. I love it. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the city that had broken them both and somehow, impossibly, put them back together. You know what's funny? Elena said. I thought I had everything before all this. Money, success, respect. But I was wrong. I had things. What I didn't have was someone who saw me as a human being, not just a balance sheet. And now I have something real. I have purpose. I have people who stood by me. I have you. Marcus smiled, the first genuine smile he'd felt in 18 years. Yes, you do. 6 months later, the Reed Justice Project had taken on 23 cases. 16 were already resolved favorably. The Sarah and Lily Reed Legal Defense Program had funded legal representation for 47 defendants who couldn't afford lawyers. Lily joined the organization full-time as their forensic specialist. She and Marcus had dinner once a week, awkward at first, then gradually more comfortable as they rebuilt what had been broken. Marcus moved out of his studio apartment and into a modest 2-bedroom place. Still nothing fancy, but it had windows that let in sunlight and enough space that he didn't feel like he was suffocating. He kept his old janitor's uniform, though, hung it in his closet as a reminder of where he'd been, what he'd survived, and what really mattered. Elena rebuilt Matthews' technology stronger than before. The scandal had exposed Titanium Industries' environmental crimes, leading to massive lawsuits and eventually forcing them into bankruptcy. The communities that had been poisoned finally received compensation. Lives were saved. And on a cold December morning, Marcus received a letter. The return address was Oregon. Inside was a single photograph. Grace, his ex-wife, standing beside Lily. On the back, Grace had written, "She told me everything you've done. I'm sorry I didn't believe in you. You're a good man, Marcus. You always were. G." Marcus put the photo on his desk, next to the picture of his old bar card, the one he'd thought he'd never use again. Epilogue: The Power of One. 1 year after that terrible morning in the courtroom, Marcus stood before a packed auditorium at Northwestern Law School. He'd been invited to give a lecture on justice and redemption. The students looked at him curiously. This wasn't a typical guest speaker, no fancy credentials or corporate background, just a man with a story. "My name is Marcus Reed," he began. "A year ago, I was a janitor. Before that, I was a lawyer who'd been destroyed by the very system he believed in. And if you'd told me that I'd end up here, speaking to future lawyers, I would have laughed." He walked across the stage, his voice steady and clear. "I want to tell you about the morning that changed everything. About a woman named Elena Matthews, who broke down in court, abandoned by her lawyers, facing a system that had turned against her. And about the choice I made to stand beside her." For the next hour, Marcus told the story. All of it. The conspiracy, the corruption, the fight, and finally, the victory. "So what's the lesson?" he asked the silent auditorium. "Is it that justice always wins? No, sometimes it doesn't. Is it that good people always prevail? No, sometimes they're crushed." He paused, looking at the young faces before him. "The lesson is this: justice doesn't happen on its own. It requires someone to stand up, someone to speak out, someone to risk everything for what's right, even when the odds are impossible." Elena Matthews deserved a defense. Everyone does. It doesn't matter if you're rich or poor, powerful or invisible. Justice isn't about who can afford the most expensive lawyer. It's about recognizing the inherent dignity of every human being. A student raised her hand. But Mr. Reed, what if we're not brave enough? What if we're too scared to stand up? Marcus smiled sadly. I was terrified. I've never been more scared in my life than the moment I stood up in that courtroom. But here's what I learned. Courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is being absolutely terrified and doing it anyway. Another student spoke up. Do you regret the 18 years you lost? Every day, Marcus said honestly. I missed watching my daughter grow up. I missed having a career, a purpose. But those 18 years also taught me something invaluable. They taught me humility. They taught me what it means to be invisible, to be looked through, to be dismissed. And that perspective made me a better advocate than I ever was before. So no, I don't regret it, because those years led me to the moment when I could make a difference. And that moment mattered more than anything I'd accomplished in my entire career before. As the lecture ended and students filed out, one young woman approached Marcus. Mr. Reed, I just want to say thank you. My family, we're immigrants, and we've been fighting a legal battle for years. We couldn't afford a lawyer, and I thought we were out of options. But hearing your story, it gives me hope. Marcus handed her his card. Come to my office tomorrow. We'll see what we can do. The woman's eyes filled with tears. You'd really help us? That's what we do. That's why we exist. Outside the auditorium, Elena waited by Marcus's car. She'd sat in the back row listening to his speech. You were incredible in there, she said, just telling the truth. Marcus, I've been thinking. The foundation is expanding internationally. We want to build legal defense programs in 12 countries. I need someone to lead that effort. Elena, I'm barely keeping up with the cases here. I know it's a lot, but you've proven something important. One person really can change the world. Imagine what we could do with a team of people just as committed. Marcus looked at the campus around them. Young people full of hope and idealism, just like he'd once been. All right, he said, let's do it, but on one condition. What's that? We make sure those programs hire people who've been knocked down, people who've been through the system and survived, because they understand what it means to need a second chance. Elena smiled. Deal. As they walked to the car, Marcus's phone buzzed. A message from Lily. Dad, I found something in the Hendricks case. Call me. This is big. Another case. Another fight. Another chance to stand beside someone when everyone else walked away. Marcus Reed smiled. For 18 years, he'd been invisible. But now he was exactly where he belonged. Final message. Elena Matthews' story reminds us that power and wealth mean nothing when the system turns against you. That betrayal can come from those we trust most, and that sometimes salvation comes from the most unexpected places. Marcus Reed's story shows us that it's never too late to reclaim your purpose. That failure isn't final. That 18 years of invisibility don't erase who you truly are. And that one person standing up at the right moment can change everything. Together, their story proves something we all need to hear. Justice isn't guaranteed. It has to be fought for. Every day, in every courtroom, by every person who refuses to look away when someone is being destroyed. If you were in Marcus's position, invisible, broken, with nothing to lose, would you have stepped forward? Would you have risked everything for a stranger? And if you were in Elena's position, abandoned, terrified, facing destruction, would you have trusted the janitor who offered to stand beside you? These questions matter, because somewhere right now, someone is breaking down in a courtroom. Someone is being betrayed by the very people who swore to protect them. Someone needs a person brave enough to step forward and say, I'll stand with you. Will you be that person? If this story moved you, if it reminded you that ordinary people can do extraordinary things, don't forget to like and subscribe. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that they're not alone. That justice is possible. That one person standing up can change the world. Thank you for watching. Remember, courage isn't the absence of fear. It's being terrified and doing it anyway. Justice doesn't always wear an expensive suit.